Are you listening? Damn.
Welcome back, beautiful people. It is your girl Tando Manaka, and I am Media Mom. Today, we're going to be unpacking digital and traditional media metrics, and I am very excited to share this with you. Like I mentioned in I think my first video, what I'd love us to get to is a point where we look at media agnostically, so looking at everything in totality as opposed to kind of siloing digital aside and putting traditional on the other side. Let's look at it as the ecosystem that it is because consumers engage with it as an ecosystem. They don't see it as a TV ad versus a YouTube ad. All they know is that your ad was in their faces. That's honestly what it is, right? So, as we get into this, I think it's very important that I start off. Firstly, guys, welcome. Welcome back to those who are returning, and welcome to those who are here for the very first time. I want to give a huge shout out to those who have already subscribed and those who continue to engage with the content. I really appreciate you guys. You are the true day ones. And one day, I'll do something special for you guys. One day, I'm still thinking about it, still contemplating what that could be, but definitely working on doing a little something special in the future. For now, guys, let's get into this. And we really need to start understanding what we're talking about, right? I've said I am media mom. I've told you we are unpacking media, but then some people might be sitting at home wondering, what is media? And me going into these metrics won't really help, right? Unless we all understand and can agree on the definition of what is media. So, media really is just a way of sharing communication information. This comes in the form of news, entertainment, and ads, really, just to sum it up. And this can be across different platforms, whether it's TV, radio, newspaper, billboards, social websites, podcasts. It really could be in any format. And that's the beauty of media is that it translates across various mediums, right? Mediums. And in fact, there's some theory around inter and intramedia decisions, but I think that's a different video. I'm just going to go into the metrics for this video and we'll unpack that. If you're interested in understanding what inter and intramedia decision making is all about, it really is just media planning, understanding which, firstly, mediums you want to use TV, radio, social, whatnot. And then from there, saying, okay, within TV, what do I want to choose? Which channels am I choosing, right? On radio, which programs am I aligning the brand with? And with social, how are we using social? Because again, all social media platforms are not made equal, they all kind of serve a different purpose. But again, I digress, right? Here we are going to be discussing the metrics. And before we get into the metrics, I really want us to really understand, right, what is media? And I've given you the definition. It is content shared across various platforms, communications of information, right? News, entertainment, or ads. You can use that definition across the board, and you'll see how we break it down into traditional media metrics and your digital media metrics. Awesome. So this one is pretty simple, right? Digital media. What is digital media? Now that we understand what media is, digital media essentially just means that it's content that we are sharing over the internet on your devices. So this could be websites, social media, streaming videos, podcasts. This is particularly skewed to things that are particularly most more so online than they are offline. Offline would be more so your traditional stuff. This is really anchored on being online content. So digital content that is shared over your devices, whatever type of device you have. And please don't judge my phone cover. Like it's been through a lot. Now let's get into traditional media. So this is more established. These are platforms that have kind of existed since, well, before you and I showed up on this planet, right? So these are established forms of communication, being TV, radio, newspaper, magazines, billboards, because again, like these are hence the name traditional, right? They've been around for a while, and they tried and tested ways of how these platforms work, very established, even kind of the language that you use around traditional media won't change much going forward. Whereas digital media, because it's such a new platform, a new way of consuming and engaging, it's such a new thing that can continue to evolve. Whereas with traditional media, these are kind of steadfast in how we measure and understand the platforms. So, yes, like we've already established, pretty simple. It's in the name, traditional, it's established. Established forms of communication, right? And that is traditional media. Now, let's really get into what you came here for. You came here for the metrics. Let's get into it. If you haven't noticed already, I love a good definition because a lot of the times misunderstandings happen because we're not using the same words the same way. So let's just be clear on what metrics are before we get into this, right? I know you're here for something, but like before we get into the nitty gritty, metrics, these are essentially just measurable values, values that can be used to track, assess the performance of a marketing campaign or a business process or online content, how these perform. So essentially, it's just a way for us to measure success for ourselves, whatever context that may be. Like I said, campaign, online content that you're just sharing, me sharing this and telling you that 50% of the people who view my content are not subscribed, that's a metric. You know what I mean? So again, these are just ways that we are able to measure the success of our content and how successful what we've put out is. So whatever media we've put out, we can measure the success of this by using various metrics again to assess this. Okay, so that is what a metric is. It's just a way of measuring, right? Cool, 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 cool. All right, so there is digital media metrics, right? Digital media metrics, I'm going to highlight like five of them, and we're going to talk about their relationship with each other, and then also try and correlate or correspond them to traditional media metrics once we've gone through those. Okay, cool. We're going to start off with unique visitors or users and impressions. So, impressions really do measure the number of times your content has been seen. So, it doesn't count whether it was a single person that saw it or there were five people that saw it. They're just stating the number of times it has been seen. Whereas unique visitors or users, that will identify the number of individuals, profiles, or accounts that have gone in and viewed your content, right? So your unique visitors or users will always be less than your impressions. But what you can find is that when you divide your impressions by your unique visitors and users, you are then able to find your exposure. So the number of times on average a user is bound to see your content or has seen your content, right? Cool. With that, then we follow up with CTR or click through rate. And the click through rate is people who've viewed or engaged with your content and then click through to your forwarding link. So oftentimes content will have a link that forwards you. So there's a call to action. They'll say sign up here, and then you gotta click a link to sign up. What we are counting with the click through rates is of those who have actually viewed your content, how many have clicked through to the next step of your content, right? So if you're thinking like funnel type of stuff, this again is kind of like where things start to dwindle, the numbers of people engaging and leading towards that ultimate sale starts to reduce, right? You're going to get awareness being at the top, and then you're going to funnel down until you get to the ultimate purchase or conversion at the end, right? Cool. Then we've got our engagement rate, and this one can be a bit contentious because it depends on which organization you're with, how this would be calculated, right? And this feels like it should be simple. Engagement rates, again, we are calculating the number of engagements, and your engagements can be your likes, your reactions, your shares, your comments, as well as shares, comments, likes, and reactions, as well as views. Yes, as well as views. So completed views though will vary. The definition of a view, so a completed view, will vary across platforms, but this would also fall into one of your metric or one of the few things that feed into your engagements, right? Because a view is an engagement at the end of the day. Cool. So your engagement rate, reason I say it's a bit contentious is that I've seen engagement rates being calculated total engagements divided by impressions. I've also seen total engagements divided by follower count. And the scenarios in which I'll see these, oftentimes impressions as the denominator of this equation fraction, right, would be impressions would be used oftentimes if you are putting paid media behind it, right? Because what would happen is when you put a budget behind a post, more people will see it and they will see it more frequently. So now we get to see the impressions and then calculate, okay, based on the number of engagements we got for this post and the impressions we gained on this post, what was our engagement rate? An alternative way, like I said earlier, would be looking at your follower count. And I find this to be much better for your organic measuring, because then with organic, you're able to say our total audience is those who are following us, right? Because we're not putting budget behind our content, meaning it won't go beyond the confines of the people who are actually following our page. Then we will then divide our total engagements for that post by the total followers of that page, right? Because that is the total audience that you would be exposed to for that content. And I think this also then gives you a different view for organic, where you're able to understand how much your followers are truly engaged with your content. Now, I guess the discrepancy is yours and your organizations, or you as an individual, as a business, to determine which one works best for you. There are actually multiple different variations of how this can be done. Some people will even go as far as going to your unique visitors, or it really, the beauty of equations like this is like, if you can make it make sense, it makes sense, right? If you can see the correlations and relationships between different data points and speak to how they can feed into each other, then y- for the most part it will make sense, to the general public. But those are the two ways I've seen engagement rate being calculated. Please feel free to add more in the comment section below, just so we can really engage, and maybe you guys can like enlighten me. How have you guys been calculating engagement rate within your organizations? Just curious. And then finally, the creme de la creme, the thing that everyone here wants to achieve, if you're doing B2B especially, um, if you're doing anything that leads to sales at the end, this is the one you really care about, and it's your conversion rate, right? So, how many people are you able to successfully convert? And in conversion, you would define, right? You in your organization can define whether this is signing up for a page, or you are selling a product and they finally purchased a product. You determine what that metric will be within your organization. Cool. And ultimately, this is the be all and end all, where it's like you've put things in your basket, you've purchased, you've now moved forward. We are then getting your conversion rate, right? And it's the rate, how much of your larger audience that you're engaging with, how much of them eventually come down this funnel and make the purchase. You want this to be as high as possible, to ensure that you are not wasting any of your advertising budget. But yes, essentially, that is the digital metrics that matter. There are a lot more metrics that we can get into, but then for the purpose of this video, I thought, let me focus on like some high level top stuff. There is sentiment and other stuff like that. But again, I just thought, let me focus on these five for the purpose of this video. And on the other side over here, we've got our traditional media metrics. And similarly, so like I said, we're going to try and find some correlations, some similarities between these metrics. We've got reach, we've got exposure or opportunities to see. Oh, sorry. Reach and exposure, or opportunities to see. And this really, again, reach is the number of users within your target market that you're able to reach through these platforms. So if you have a defined target market and you start planning on radio and TV, they're going to give you your reach figures when you do your post-campaign analysis, your PCA. You'll get a reach percentage. And that percentage is saying of your target audience. So you've defined a target audience and they tell you how big that universe is, right? So they'll tell you how many individuals within this classification of a target audience they're able to reach. They're saying of that, X percent was reached by your campaign. And that is your reach on traditional media. Then you've got your exposure, and similar to that, what I mentioned earlier about unique impressions and unique videos, visitors, Your exposure is really the opportunities to see. So how many times, or that frequency, how frequently will a user see your ad or be exposed to your ad um, through the duration of that campaign, right? And I believe the rule last I checked was like three or two plus, three plus. It's been a while, but yes, two plus, three plus is like the rule of thumb that we want to achieve in terms of your exposure on traditional media. Then you've got your GRPs, your gross rating points, or your TVRs, your TV ratings. This is the rating system. So basically, we're saying people, your TVRs, GRPs tell you the number of people who have viewed that content or have been exposed to that content, right? This is traditionally used on TV and radio mostly. In fact, I think exclusively, if I may be wrong, but yes, this is used on TV and radio, and this gives you like almost a count of the users who have engaged with your content or have viewed your content. Now, it is a calculation, there is a formula, so I'm just going to plug that in over here. And that's how you calculate your TVRs or your GRPs on traditional media. Then we've got frequency, again, similar to your exposure. It is how frequently content is then kind of fed to consumers or users, right? How often do they see that ad? And then we've got your circulation, and this speaks to print media, so your newspapers and your magazines. We use circulation as a metric to then ascertain whether or not your ad was successful in reaching an audience, or whether or not your print ad or your print publication was successful at reaching its audience. And again, like I mentioned in my previous video, a lot of this information is accessible through partners such as Nielsen, Talma for your traditional media. And then for your digital media, you'll be able to look at your Google Analytics or look at your social listening tools to start seeing some of this data come through. So, yeah, awesome. Awesome. Now that we've gone through some of the digital media metrics and traditional media metrics, I'd like to see where the commonalities are. And please engage down below if you guys can think of any other ways that these are similar with each other. But like I mentioned before, at the top of it all, in terms of commonalities, I see it happening a lot more with exposure or frequency, as well as with the impressions and unique visitors. So when I started the digital media metrics section, what I mentioned is if you divide your impressions by unique visitors, then you'll be able to get an idea of what your exposure or frequency is on digital media. So that's where I see the biggest correlation. We can also then say with unique visitors and reach, there's some correlation in that. You're able to kind of estimate how many people have actually viewed that content, right? And I think that even goes as far as like including TVRs or GRPs into that commonalities space. So for now, this is where I stand with this. It is very difficult to kind of look at these completely agnostically because, like I said, views are measured very differently across different social platforms or digital platforms. So it is very difficult for us to get a unified perspective of things. But I do firmly believe, though, it is feasible and it is very much possible, especially when looking at integrated reporting, for us to kind of have a more holistic perspective of how our media is working for us. And I'm speaking as a media professional and working with brands. And really, I'm trying to resonate with those who work with brands themselves and working in media, is that we could find a way to get these metrics to speak to each other and get them to start speaking a common language. Like I said, digital media is forever evolving, whereas traditional media is kind of um, not going to change. It is what it is with traditional media. There are ways for us to then augment how we view and understand traditional media or in digital media to feed into how we are then able to analyze it in collaboration with traditional media, as opposed to trying to silo and isolate these different platforms. Yeah, so I hope that was informative. Please stay tuned. Thank you so much for getting so far into the video. And like I said, we've got another shout out. So here we go. Ding. Right? Cool. So I got a DM. I'm not gonna say who it was. I've redacted a name that was included in the question just to maintain privacy. But she's essentially asking me about a CPP tracker. So I worked on a brand where I was essentially the lead analyst on this account. And we had a CPP deal with the broadcasters. So this essentially was a deal to ensure that our large sum of investment into this media platforms or various media platforms would perform for us. And this is again going into this idea of performance marketing, right? So performance marketing is all about ensuring that your campaign is working effectively to result in those conversions, those leads, or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So normally with performance marketing is this metrics you'll use will be cost-based metrics. So it could be cost per point, cost per impression, cost per click, cost per lead, whatever kind of mechanism you're using for billing, right? So media owners will bill you based on the success, right? This is them saying, listen, we know our platform works, we know it'll be effective for your campaign. So based on that, give us a sum and we will a sum of money and we will disperse your content to your ad across our audience, and based on the performance, that's how you will be billed, right? So, okay, cool. What we did is I worked for this brand and we had this CPP tracker essentially. And I was then getting data from various broadcast houses, and they would share with me their data on how our content performed on their platforms. So, the point of this was really around ensuring that the budget was used most effectively. Also, when you're planning large scales, because so it was FMCG, and when you're planning large scale for these brands, the spot planning becomes very ineffective. Choosing your own individual spots, like I'm saying, I want to broadcast 3 times on Generations this week, and then whatnot on Movango. Sorry, was Movango still on air? Whichever traditional programs, right? You want to book, like manually place your bookings becomes very tedious when you're working with a very large budget because you are planning a lot of spots, right? So what becomes more effective for us as brands, for our brands, is then to do CPP deals where the broadcaster will ensure a specific CPP, so cost per point, and that point is your GRP points, so cost per GRP essentially. And they're calculating that to ensure that they are never below a certain cost per points, right? So the higher your cost per point, it means the more expensive it was to reach your audience. The lower it is means you are reaching your audience at a low rate, right? So they needed to reach a certain target. So every year we'd renew, refresh what these targets are based on the past year's performance, and then we'll benchmark using that, right? And we'd say, okay, you then need to achieve 2,000 Rand cost per point across your channels. How you place our ads, that's at your discretion. We might put in there a disclosure that we want a 50-50 split between prime and shoulder, or a 60-40 split, or whatever the split may be. But then what we then do is we tell the media owners, this is the budget we're allocating to your broadcaster. This is the CPP that we would like to achieve, nothing below and nothing above, especially nothing above. You can be below, you can reach the target just slightly below, but you can't spend more than you can afford to spend, right? Because that CPP tells us, at least from our end on brand side, the estimated number of times our brand will be exposed to our users, taking into consideration the size of the broadcaster that you're working with, right? Obviously, smaller the broadcaster, meaning the smaller their reach, the more expensive they're going to be. So there's a bit of a premium associated with advertising with them. So essentially, this tracker was to hold our media owners accountable throughout the process to ensure that they are performing the way they need to, that they are placing our spots in the most effective spots in order to reach our audience and achieve our ultimate goal. And at the same time allowing us to manage our budget, that we are using the budget as appropriately as possible. So another thing about agency life is that you never want to go too far below the budget, because that indicates that you've got too much budget in your hands. Excuse me, sorry, something just flew into this room and can't find it now, so good luck to me later. As I was saying, this CPP tracker essentially became a tool for us to, like I said, ensure that media owners are upholding their end of the deal. So placing our ads where we need them to be placed so that they are working effectively for the brand, as well as ensuring that we're using the budget accordingly month on month, understanding what that cost per point is. So every month we'd see, okay, are we above or below our CPP target? And then we can then adjust every month going forward to ensure that we're still within the constraints of our budget. Because it's very easy to then, very quickly overspend on what you were anticipating to spend on, and then find yourself in a situation where you need to then pay extra. Outside of that agreement, right? So it was really just a way for us to monitor and measure how much it was we were spending on media, ensuring that our media was working effectively, and then also ensuring that we have that a good kind of broad reach of our audience across different broadcasting stations. And we used the CPP tracker across TV, and then we also had a similar tracker that we use for radio as well, because you are able to, again, it's very similar metrics across radio and TV that you're able to use. So I hope this answers your question to friend X. I will not mention your name. And I hope then you are able to use that information and go forth and prosper in whatever it is you're doing now. And yeah, guys, we've come to the end of the video, and I really want to give a huge, huge, huge shout out again to everyone that has already subscribed, to everyone who comes back and watches the videos. Please, please, please subscribe, like, and share so that everyone and anyone who's willing to learn and grow with us is here to join us. So have a lovely day forward. Enjoy your weekend and be safe, guys. Bye.
Are you listening? Damn.